Okay.
We have Merrick in Toronto. I'll be in Toronto here in a couple months.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
All right. Perfect. So I'm actually a theist. Like, my family is from Poland, so they're very religious and they practice Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually I attend church, and there was actually one thing that the priest said that was actually quite entertaining to me, which was kind of his way of proving that Christianity is true. And he compared it predominantly to the Muslim faith. He said that for example, when we look at near-death experiences, that Christians will often have near-death experiences seeing Jesus, but Muslims will never have near-death experiences seeing Mohammed. So therefore, Christianity is correct over Islam. And so what I did was
first of all, that's just not true. In the matter of what people do and don't see, people see all sorts of religious iconography, and actually saying that because Christians see Christian images and Muslims don't, even if Muslims didn't, that wouldn't tell you whether or not Christianity is true, especially if Muslims have within their religion, which they do, a prohibition against specific imagery of Muhammad. So it's not surprising. But what Muslims do or don't see is irrelevant to whether or not what Christians see is in fact true.
Yeah, and so then what I did was so I also looked it up, and I was not 100% sure about that, so that's why I wanted to ask you guys. And so you really don't think then that gives Christianity any credence over Islam?
No.
Well, I don't think it gives Christianity any credence. Well, the very idea that you're framing this in terms of whether or not Christianity has credence over Islam is irrelevant to whether or not Christianity is true. Because if you had, let's say we had 50 levels of falseness and Christianity came in as slightly less false than some other religion, it's still false, right?
Yeah.
So I want to know why it's true. And the fact that people, having near-death experiences might see religious imagery that comports with what they believe doesn't tell me about whether or not what they believe is true.
Yeah, and there's also been a couple of ones in North America where Islamic people would also see Jesus. What would you say about that?
I don't think that there's much of an explanation for what people see when their brains are oxygen deprived and they're dying. I mean, your brain could pop off lots of things. Some people see nothing. Some people report seeing not a thing. And I mean, different people see different things. Now, and even if we all saw the same thing, all that would say is that we, for whatever reason, are having the same experience at death, that our brains are reacting the same way. It wouldn't really give us any objective truth about anything outside our own dying brain.
If everybody saw a dragon, does that mean that what they saw was real and that it ties to the truth of something?
No, it doesn't.
Right. And the answer to your question about why Muslims in North America might in fact see Christian religious imagery might have something to do with the fact that this is what they're exposed to when they read and learn about near-death experiences, for the same reason that when people encounter aliens and have images of aliens and alien abductions, once upon a time we had a wide variety of aliens, which is, if you go back to the old monster movies and the space people are showing up, they looked very, very different. And then around the time of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you get the almond-headed, big-eyed grays that becomes ingrained in popular culture, such that now when somebody has an alien abduction, they are incredibly more likely to describe that alien as the almond-headed, big-eyed, no hair, gray alien. Doesn't tell us anything at all about whether or not those aliens exist, whether or not that experience is accurate. When you have something that has become such a part of the culture that surrounds you, it's hardly surprising that you will see images that match with that culture. But Tracie made the better point, which is, even if we all saw the same thing, that doesn't tell us one thing about whether or not there's a life after death, because a near-death experience isn't a death experience. And the fact that you see something with a brain in an incapacitated, diminished state, which may not even be the case, by the way. It may not be that while your brain was incapacitated, you saw this. What may in fact be more likely is that once you regained consciousness, your brain tried to invent a story for the experience, and that's when the visions were invented.
Yeah, so that's actually a very good point, and I can't argue with that. And I just had one other question and it kind of went around the same lines, and this would more be kind of argument for soul's sake. So there's been people, like, there's been maybe 20 or 30 cases that I've read about online where people who are born blind will have near-death experiences where they can see things they claim that happens around their body and things like that. So would you say that that demonstrates a soul because the brain itself wasn't able to see?
Are we able to determine what they actually experienced?
We're not, no.
Okay, so we're basically would be taking the word of somebody who has never seen, that is claiming that they experienced something that they think might have been sight, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say that raises an interesting question because we are actually developing machines that can translate brainwaves into visuals and translate it into sound, so that people are exposed to images and sounds, and then later we have a machine that can translate what they are experiencing in their brain. So it then can put out, a facsimile of the sound, facsimile of the image to different degrees. And so that's a type of thing where maybe some years hence, we would be able to get an idea of what actually is occurring in the brain of somebody who is born blind, who says, I had some sort of experience I think was visual.
And here's a question that troubles me. So you're Catholic, I suppose. Your parents are Catholic?
Yes.
Okay. Let's imagine for a minute that Christianity, and in particular the Catholicism, was true.
Yeah.
What does it say that the best arguments that somebody can come up with it in favor of it is that, hey, when people are near death and their brains aren't working properly, they see things, and sometimes they see religious iconology, and sometimes it maps with Catholicism. Or someone who was blind for their entire life has a near-death experience where they return and report that they were able to see something we can't verify or really test. Why is this God, who I suppose wants at least some people to come to an appreciation and understanding for who he is? Why is it that this isn't obvious, that this isn't uniform? Why why is a Damascus Road experience good enough for Saul, and the rest of us have to go, well, there was this person who had a near-death experience that's kind of sort of like, this here, and it seems a little more reliable, and therefore I will bet my eternal life on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing, too.
I mean, if you were God...
I think, and I'm pretty sure you brought this up.
If you were God, would you operate under a paradigm anything like that? Where you keep yourself hidden, but when people do a near death, you give them like a little McNugget, or you let them see somebody who passed on, and they come back with no useful information. Not here's where I buried the fortune, here's where I hid the will. It's I love you and I can't wait for you to join me in heaven.
It also raises all kinds of weird justice questions, right? So if somebody almost dies and they have this experience and God gives them this vision, and then they believe, and I never have any visions, and then I don't believe, and I go to hell when I die. How is that fair that they got this, that God decided to put his finger on that person and offer them up some proof that he's not willing to give to me, but then I'm judged based on the same, whether I believe it or not, but they were given something I wasn't given.
I mean, I would think that would be immoral, which means that you and I are both more moral than the God that you believe is perfectly moral.
Yeah, it seems like everyone should get the same the same evidence, and then, if we're going to be judged on belief, that evidence should be sufficient for belief.
I don't know.
It shouldn't be.
We've said about 5 things now. I'm wondering if you had any kind of answer for those.
I think he's asking questions. I have a feeling, I'm getting the feeling, I'm sorry, that the name was, Mirik. I get the feeling that you're more kind of asking because these are questions that you're actually wondering about yourself.
Well, yeah, that's actually true, because it's kind of like there's so many things in the religion that I have difficulty believing, and I guess maybe this was the last thing that kind of held me back.
I think it's definitely something worth looking into more. It's any of these questions that you have, if you look up skeptical responses, you'll find information either way, because you're definitely being given information that this is in support of belief. And so I think it's only fair that you could then go and look at the rebuttals to this information on the skeptical side, and then you can determine for yourself what you think makes the most sense.
Yeah, no, of course. And that's actually partially also why I called in, just because I wanted to get some other input and see exactly what you guys would have thought about the whole thing too, because I still enjoy listening to the show and everything like that.
Oh,
good. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
Keep asking questions. I mean,
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sure.
As a reminder, after this